to see you, but just unmute yourself and do ask. Remember, there's nothing, no silly question about this. Okay. Okay. So the first, let me start with a question before beginning my GAN. Why is Jimmy Anderson an all-time great? You know that he has broken Kumble's record of 619 wickets. Now, why is Anderson such a considered to be one of the greatest bowlers of all times?
So anyone who is interested about cricket, remember that this is, an interactive session, so please discuss the matter in that way. Okay? So for this kind of meeting, there is no difference between teacher and students. All of us are students for learning all these things. So we are at same level. So please, uh, interact accordingly.
And particularly consider the ball in which, the way in which Anderson got Virat out for a golden duck. Was it a, why was it a great ball? Was it a banana swing or what was it exactly? I mean, none of you are interested in cricket?
No, sir, not me.
Sir, he has a great outswing and he hits the pitch hard, means deck hard, and is consistent with his line and length.
Yeah, so you saw the ball. See, I mean, there's no point in just giving a lecture. If you're interested, it's not compulsory, it's not part of your course. So
Sir,
unless you're
sir, he
interested, there's no
sir
point.
he made
Yeah.
the batsman play. Means the ball which he bowled means the batsman cannot afford to leave. Means he's enticed because of the line and length.
No, but what is the swing? Was it a banana swing? A
Sir,
huge swing?
outswinger.
No, no. What was the how much did the ball swing? Did it swing a lot?
Sir, just enough to get the nick.
Did it bounce a lot? If you watch the
Sir,
replay,
it's
you will see. Yeah,
sir, it's a stock ball. Means
yeah, exactly. So that is the point that I'm trying to make. It was a stock ball. Uh, Anderson, McGrath, I mean, when they were asked about the bowling, they always emphasize on the stock ball. They said that every six balls, we don't, if you bowl an extraordinary ball, it will beat the batsman all ends up. It will look great on the TV screen, but it won't get you a wicket. It's a stock ball bowling stock ball one after another that gets you the wicket. And similarly for research, we think of it as extremely glamorous, but there are some rules, and you have to go on following the rules, bowling the stock balls, and this will build up an edifice which is impressive. Not the great, I mean, the flashes of genius will be occasional, one in a lifetime, twice in a lifetime, possibly never. But if you go on doing the hard work, that will give you something which is great. And so, I would say that don't try to, the first thing in research is don't try to achieve too much. Be as simple as possible and follow the rules. Once you become mature enough, you will see that there are occasions when the rules should be broken. But by and large, I'm going to give you some rules. Follow the rules as if it is the Bible or whatever. Okay. Now, when you are writing a paper, as opposed to a literature survey, we generally follow the following structure. The bold gives the section headings. We start off with an introduction, a literature survey. Then we have a section where we give the research objective, the data and method. We present the findings. We discuss it. There's a conclusion. And it is followed by two technical sections, references and appendix.
Sir, sorry to interrupt. Sir, are you presenting something?
Yeah, isn't it visible?
No, sir.
No, let the presenter.
Oh, it stopped presenting. Yeah, is it visible now?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So as you can see, this is the structure. And as I've told you that this is the general structure, the traditional, the classical structure. But nowadays what we often see is that the literature survey goes into the introduction. We generally don't have space enough for a separate section on the literature survey. Because in most cases, there are word limits. The word limit is 6,000 to 8,000. In many journals, it is now coming down to 6,000. And so it's not possible to have a separate section on literature survey. Okay, now what do we cover in each of these sections? In the introductory section, we introduce the research problem. Okay. So the first thing is, what is the context? Like if you're doing a study on COVID, the economic impact of COVID, the impact of lockdown on migrant workers, what is the background of the problem, the context? And in this context, I mean, don't just go on and on. It should be as brief as possible. When you're talking about the context, you should relate it to the research problem and also highlight why the problem is important. Okay, so it's not enough to say that I'm studying this. You should also be able to justify the choice of your research problem. So start off with the context, introduce your research problem, justify why it is important, and then we give a very brief summary of the paper. And when I mean brief summary, I really mean brief. It should be in just 3 to 4 sentences. Because if you have summarized everything, no one is going to read your entire paper. So it should give you a taste of what is going to happen. But only the taste. It should also intrigue you. You should reveal, but not too much. Okay. Okay. Next, we come to the literature survey. So I'm going to discuss each of them in more detail. But briefly, literature survey has 2 sections. What the earlier studies have found and the limitations. This is the crux of the paper. Data analysis, we find that students don't have much problem in that. But introduction and literature survey, even PhD students cannot write properly. Forget about PhD students, even journal papers are inadequate in these two sections. Third is, after you've identified, you've summarized what earlier studies have found, you should identify the limitations of these findings. Then we have the research objective, where we state the research question. And here I would like to emphasize, this you should always follow. You should have only one research question. One paper, one question. That's all. That main question can be broken down into smaller sub-questions, right? But the main question should be one. You can't say that I'm going to study the impact of lockdown on migrant workers and on the health infrastructure. No, these are two separate papers. If you have material to analyze both, excellent. You write two papers on it. One paper on migrant workers, one paper on health infrastructure. Now, after you have given the question, remember that you have to answer the question. You have to prove, you have to say that this is what I expect from the findings, and this is how I'm going to prove that my expectation is true. So you have to operationalize your question and the sub-questions into hypothesis. Next, you come to the data, the source of data, sample profile, and the methods for analysis. Then is the what we often consider to be the main section, the findings and discussion. Now, in the findings, you just present the
repeat after the hypothesis what you said.
Data and method. I'm going to come into the details. This is just a structure. Okay. This is the outline of what will be there in each section. So in data and method, you have to give the source of the data and describe the methods that you are going to use for analysis. Then we come to the results part, which comprises of two main sections, findings and discussions. Now, what is the difference between them? In findings, you just present the results of your analysis. So you give a table and you say that this table reveals this. You give a graph and you say the graph is this. The graph shows that the earnings of migrant workers have gone down over the years. The table shows that the health infrastructure is poorer in these states. Okay, so you just give the table a figure or statistical analysis and you just say what the result is. In discussion, you come to the implications of the results. Okay, so you have found that earnings of migrant workers have gone down. Okay, what is the implication? It means that the welfare levels is going to fall. Maybe they're going to, if they fall sick, they won't be able to get treatment, whatever. And the second point is how it matches with the earlier studies. So there are earlier studies, and what do the earlier studies find? Do they also get the same result? If both of the results are same, it's fine. If they don't match, why don't they match? Okay, so basically in the discussion section, you're situating the results, the analysis. Okay, what you have done in the findings part. You place the findings with, you match the findings with a literature survey. In conclusion, now you're winding up. So you have set of certain threads and you wind up. You give us, start with a summary of the objective, a very brief summary of the objective and hypothesis, 2 or 3 lines. And then you say whether your results have confirmed your analysis or not. You come to the policy implications, the limitations of the study, and then how your study can be extended. It is followed by, as I've said, two technical sections. One is references and the other is appendix. Appendix I'm not going to discuss. Suppose you have some graphs or tables that the reader would like to just check, but at the same time it is not crucial, and if you place it in the text is going to disturb the flow. So place those tables or graphs in the appendix. So these are important to show that you have done the analysis, but it's not so important that the reader has to look at it. Okay, so any questions at this point before I come to each of these points separately?
Sir, in conclusion and in introduction, in both the places you are giving a short summary of the paper. So what is
Yes.
the difference between what we summarize in introduction and what we summarize in the conclusion?
See, actually, you're stating the objective and hypothesis thrice. Okay, one over here, introduction, then you're giving it in details, and then you're again summarizing in the conclusion. Don't use the same language. That is one thing. When you're summarizing in the introduction, I would say that you should focus more on, you should not give the details too much. State everything in broad details, that I'm going to look at the what is happening to the earnings of migrant workers. Okay. When you're giving the research objective in the text, give everything in detail. So I'm going to look at the migrant earnings of migrant workers. What do I mean by earnings? How do I measure it? What are the problems in measuring it? So now you have it in details. When you're giving it in the summary, then you should come to the, here you have initially you have started off with a general statement. Here you should focus on the operational parts. That in our paper we have tried to measure earnings of migrant workers in this way and tried to test the following hypothesis. Okay, so the initial summary should be very general. When you're going to the conclusion part, the focus should be more on the how you have operationalized it. When I take a particular problem, it might be easier.
Sir, and another question, what if we do not have a hypothesis when we are starting?
Sorry, your voice has broken.
Sir, I wanted to ask, what if we do not have a hypothesis when we are starting?
You do not have a summary.
Hypothesis.
Sorry?
Hypothesis. Any
Oh,
hypothesis.
you don't have a hypothesis.
Yeah.
If you don't have a hypothesis, you can't do the work. You will have to frame the hypothesis. I'll come to this later on, why we need the hypothesis, how to prepare the hypothesis. Okay, now some general tips on how to write, prepare the typing part, the visual part, then I'll come to the specifics. What you have said, the question that you have asked is very important. What if you don't have a hypothesis? When you're starting your work, you won't have a hypothesis, right? But you'll have to build up before you start writing. In fact, even before you do the analysis. Okay. So when you're preparing the text, you should clearly have identified sections. Like this is section 1, introduction. Okay. Don't use underlining. Make it bold. Don't even make it italics. Now, under a particular section, when you're starting the introduction doesn't have any subsection. It doesn't have any tables or graphs also. If you need a graph in the introduction, put it in the appendix and refer to it. Okay, so the introduction will be purely textual and only one main section. The same goes for the conclusion. But for the remaining part of the text, you can have subsections. Like 2, crisis in the Indian economy. 2.1, features of the crisis. 2.2, you're giving a structural model, whatever it is. Right? Now remember that everything should be, keep it in bold. Don't try to make too fancy. Students think that if you have bold, italics, underlining, this will emphasize and make your writing more visually attractive. Believe me, it doesn't. Keep everything simple. It will help you. It will be visually more attractive. Okay. The second thing is use the same font and same size throughout your paper. Generally, we use Times New Roman and 12. But, if you do use Calibri 11 or something else, okay, it's nothing to get spastic about. But do use the same font. One paragraph, Times New Roman, size 12. The second paragraph, Times New Roman, size 11. Third paragraph, Calibri. That is sloppy work. The line spacing should be 1.5 consistently. Alignment justify, paragraph. This is something that I'll have to show to you in Word. So let me open Word and show it to you. These are very small things. It's not very easy. It's very easy to forget them. But and the problem is that Word, the template of Word also encourages this. These bad habits. But yeah, good. So just give me 1 second, please. I'm having a bit of a problem. Okay, it's something that can be done pretty easily, so I'll show it later, unless everything is hung. Okay. Just a minute. Now I'm having a hanging. Things are hanging up. Okay. So I've got the word over here. See, this is a paragraph, okay? I'm selecting the paragraph. I'm going to, in home, I'm going to paragraph. See, alignment should be justified. The spacing should be, before should be 0, after should also be 0. And the line spacing should be 1.5. Now, if you look at Word, the default is like this. Okay. So generally what we have seen students doing, you're typing like this, when you come to the end of the paragraph, sorry. You're typing like this. Okay. No, this is wrong for two senses. Look, when you select this, you can see that there's a huge space over here. So we should always make it 0. Okay. So when we have come to the end of the paragraph, put an enter. You come to the next line, put another enter, start new para over here. There should be a blank line between the two paragraphs. Okay. So this paragraph ends, blank line, a new para. When this ends, again you have a blank line. Is this clear, everyone?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So this
Yes.
is what I mean, paragraph line spacing before, after. Alignment is justify blank line after each paragraph. So enter. So after you finish a paragraph, there should be 2 enters, and then you start the new paragraph. You may want to insert references. Word will give you an option, insert footnote, in which you give some additional information. Okay, remember footnotes should not contain any graphs or tables. By figures, I mean graphs or table. You can give some data. So maybe the footnote contains that migrant workers comprises 25% of the population. But they should not have any tables. Okay. So if you use the word options, you go to references. Just have to type insert footnote. And then you just type it over here, whatever. Generally, footnotes are typed in 10. The font size is 10. And remember that it should be the same font size, font that you're using in the text. Like I'm using Times New Roman over here. So in the footnote also, it should be in Times New Roman. If I'm using Calibri over here, it should be Calibri over in the footnotes also. Okay, if you use the word option for footnote, it's going to number by itself. Okay, so the numbering will be automatic. 1, 2, you don't have to worry about the numbering. Instead of a footnote, you can also convert them into endnotes. Okay. So after you have typed in the footnote, you can right click, convert to endnote. Endnote means everything goes at the end. So it has gone at the end of the paper. There's no rule about this, but in fact journals have rules which one you should follow. But when you are writing a paper by yourself, there's no hard and fast rule. I would say go for a footnote, because you can see what a footnote is when you're on the same paper. In EndNote, you have to go back and see. So it's a back and forth transition. Very irritating. I'm sure that you will acknowledge it's very irritating. So don't use endnotes. Use footnotes. Okay. Now let's come to the structure in more details. Okay. So what I've said is the visual part so far, the arrangement. Now we come to the writing. So as I've said, start off with the context. Okay. Keep in mind that a person who is reading it is not an expert on this. So you have to give little bit of a background information so that the reader understands what the problem is and why it is important. Okay. At the same time, it should not go on and on. Remember that typically you have limitations on space. There will be rules that you have to submit your paper in 2000 words, 3000 words. So if you spend 50% of your paper on the context, you are in trouble. So start off with the context. Let's think of a hypothetical example. Suppose we want to look at, as a result of the COVID and COVID related lockdowns, you know that cancer treatment has been affected, right? How has it been affected?
So I'm not very sure, but like if even for say chemotherapy in the initial stages you had to test negative for COVID and something like that, like before you were given any treatment, and there was also a shortage on hospital beds. So
Okay. But will you agree with this statement, or do you think that it is worth considering? Just answer yes and no.
yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Acha. So let us study this problem. Okay. So our hypothetical problem is okay. So first is you have to state the context. What do you think is the context?
So the pandemic, like the COVID entire situation, how it has affected us in the past 2 years.
Not past few years, past
Two,
one
I
year,
said past
a little bit.
past
Yeah.
2 years,
Okay.
yes.
Okay. Yeah. So there has been a pandemic, and why is it affecting cancer treatment? I mean, you can have diseases, you can have other problems, but why is cancer treatment becoming important? Why is this problem becoming important? There's pressure on the health infrastructure, right? COVID is creating a pressure on the health infrastructure. People are afraid to go out. Okay, there are restrictions on mobility. Right? So these are the problems. So don't give a history of COVID. That COVID has started in Wuhan, it spread to this country, that country. That is not the context. If you want to start off with Wuhan, you have to deal with it in one sentence. That COVID started in Wuhan and it spread throughout the world by March. It became a global epidemic in March. Then you you have to start relating this to cancer treatment. Okay. So this is causing a lot. Don't focus immediately on cancer. Say that resources are being diverted from to the treatment of COVID. Hospital beds are shifting. Medical facilities are shifting. People are afraid to go out. Treatment, diagnostic tests are very difficult to undertake. So you have not brought in cancer, but you're laying the background. Okay, so by context, I don't mean anything related to COVID. It should be that part of COVID which is related to your cancer treatment. Okay, then So you have laid down the groundwork. Now state the issue. One single issue. Okay. Which is, does COVID affect cancer treatment? That is your question. Don't make it huge. Has COVID affected cancer? Has COVID affected TB? Has COVID affected this disease, that disease? Has it affected nutrition? All these problems are important, but they will require different data sources, different methods to study. Don't mix them up. We feel that if we bring in a large number of questions, the paper becomes very high and mighty. People get very impressed. No, it becomes very confusing. When I read the paper, when I'm judging a paper, I should feel that, okay, this author is trying to do something which is doable and which I can understand why he's doing, how he's going to do it. So nothing grandiose, nothing extravagant, just talk balls. Then state why is the research issue important. So, okay, if COVID has affected cancer treatment, why is studying this problem important?
So, because we can say that cancer is like a huge issue among like all countries, one of the major sources of death, especially in like developed countries. So,
Not only
if it,
developed, even in developing countries. Even in countries
right,
like India, it's rising.
and then we say that because it needs such sophisticated like treatment methods, when the access and mobility like reduces of people to to like go ahead and get treatment, then we are having higher mortality in like cancer patients.
Yeah, and one reason for the higher mortality is that people are coming for treatment late. See, in cancer, you have 4 stages: stage 1, stage 2, 3A, 3B. If you're in stage 1, the prognosis is good. Stage 2, the prognosis worsens. Stage 3 is just a matter of time. How long can we keep you alive? The problem is that we have done some studies in Tata Medical, and we have found that 70 to 80% of women are coming for treatment in stage 3A or 3B. Okay. So what does it mean? That if you can catch the disease early, your prognosis improves. Now, COVID is leading to delays in starting the treatment, in identification of the disease and starting treatment. Okay, so that is why this problem is becoming important. The prognosis, the mortality rate is going up. Then, as I've said, that in the literature survey, we don't generally have a separate section on literature survey. We often put it over here, 2 or 3 large paragraphs over here. Even if you don't follow the style, you should at least have 1 paragraph on the earlier findings. What have the earlier findings, studies on COVID or cancer treatment found out? Report them very briefly over here. Then, what has remained unexplored? So if you read the papers, focus on the concluding sections. They will typically say that these are some issues which our paper has not looked at. So when you read the conclusion, you should make a list of all the unexplored issues. This should help you to identify your research objectives. Okay. So you're summarizing what other people have said. You summarize the limitations and you say, okay, there are 4 limitations. I'm going to focus on the second limitation. Do you get the idea of how to come to your research objective? You suddenly don't say that COVID started in Wuhan, it spread throughout the world, people went to a football match and so many people died. And now we are going to examine 10 or 12 issues. Everything should be small and concise and related to your topic. Okay, so just state your research objective in one line, and then in 2 or 3 lines, I would prefer 2 lines at the most, what your data and methods are. You will elaborate later on. Finally, you should give the structure, that what each section has. Nothing specific, just you should have section 2 describes the data source and method. Section 3 presents the analysis. Don't say what the analysis is. Don't say what the data and method is. Just say section 2 is going to give the data and methods. Okay. And remember, no graphs or tables. Now, generally we find that people, the introduction is the most important section, in the sense that the reader goes through it. If he finds this important, then he proceeds. So this introduction should be very tightly written. And because of this, you should never write the introduction at the start. After you have finished all the other sections, then only you should come back and start writing the introduction. Now you know what you have done. If you start doing this, if you're going to start writing the introduction first, the problem is that you will find that when doing the work, you will find that you will have to change your objectives. You'll have to change your research hypothesis. You had planned on certain analysis, but that's not doable, or some other questions are raised, so you have to extend your analysis. In other words, your plan is going to constantly change. Even the best of plans are going to change. So if you start off by writing the introduction, you'll have to constantly write, rewrite, and again rewrite your introduction. So always keep it at the end. When you've finished off all the sections, the introduction and conclusion, these are the main parts, write it after that. And when you're writing it, keep in mind what you have written in the middle of the paper. Okay. Literature survey, the toughest part. Okay, you have a research problem. Identify the keywords in this. Yes, someone wanted to ask some.
স্যার এই স্ট্রাকচারটা কি কোভিডের সাথে, হ্যাঁ স্ট্রাকচার পার্টটাতে এটা কিভাবে আমরা অ্যানালিসিস করব সেই বিষয়ে?
কোভিডের জন্য না, আমি কোভিডকে একটা এক্সাম্পল হিসেবে নিচ্ছি। তুমি যে
মানে-
প্রবলেম নাও না কেন,
এটা
মানে তুমি
অ্যানালিসিস
যদি দেখতে চাও, এখানে তো আমি অ্যানালিসিসে আসিনি,
আচ্ছা মানে
আমি তো কি করে লিখছি সেটা বলছি। এটা তো জাস্ট একটা সেকশন, তুমি কিভাবে লিখবে, প্রথম সেকশনটা কিভাবে লিখবে।
আচ্ছা
The second section was the literature survey. So you have a research question. COVID has affected cancer treatment. Now, what are the keywords in this?
So cancer.
If you search using cancer, you're going to have everything.
COVID cancer.
COVID cancer.
COVID plus cancer, plus treatment.
Treatment, yes.
But treatment you can keep till later. Okay. If you have, you should always start with broad and add keywords. So COVID plus cancer, start with that. If you get too many papers, plus treatment, plus detection. Okay. There are different, there are many search engines. Unfortunately, quite a lot of them are paid, so you can't use them. Google Scholar and PubMed. These are free search engines. Don't use Google because Google is going to throw up non-academic references. So Google Scholar, PubMed, go to the site, put in this search keywords and find out the relevant studies. You'll get a page. Not all of them will be relevant. But if you can get hold of, let us say, 10 papers, and remember when you're choosing the papers, keep in mind one thing. If you have a choice, suppose one paper has come out, you have two sources, one as a working paper, one as a published paper. Always use the published paper. Don't use the working paper. Okay? Refer to the published version of the paper. If it is not downloadable, you can certainly download the working paper and use it. But refer to the published paper. And secondly, there are papers, we call them predatory journals. They are not good quality journals. Generally, you'll find that the issue is issue 1, issue 2, volume 1, volume 2, and they ask for money to publish your papers. So don't cite papers from such predatory journals. If you have a good paper, download it. Then look at the literature survey undertaken by this paper, by the 10 papers that you have downloaded. Okay. You will see that they will generally, each of the papers will not refer to completely exhaustive list of papers. There will be many overlaps. So suppose each of the 10 papers cites, let us say 8 papers each. So how many papers should there be? 40? Sorry, 10 into 8, 80. You will see that there are lots of overlaps. So you will get only about 30 or 40 papers. What you should do is arrange them thematically and then chronologically. Use what is called a survey table, preferably in Excel. This is an example of a survey table. Author, year of publication, the geographical zone, objective, method. Over here, you should generally have the findings. Okay, this summary table was used for a slightly different purpose. That's why it has a different heading, variables and dimensions. It's actually findings. Okay. So enter this in an Excel sheet. You have got 30 or 40 papers. You will see that some of them are not relevant. Enter all the data in this form, very short form, in the Excel sheet. Just one after another. Then go through them carefully. Can you arrange them in themes? Like this paper wanted to measure empowerment. Okay. Now empowerment can be measured. She found that empowerment can be measured in using two methods. One, we can use proxies. So she summarized the proxy literature over here. So instead of empowerment, we can see whether what is the age of marriage, what is the education, what is the woman's monthly income, and so on. The other is we can create an index using a method called principal component analysis. So what are the variables that we can take? Okay. So what she has done is she has arranged the papers according to two different methods. After she has written this, entered all the data, she looked at the table and she said that, okay, I can group them into two groups, two categories. One is the proxy category, one is this category. You will have a different category. You will have to find out how many categories there are and so on, and what these categories are. Within a category or theme, arrange it chronologically. starting with the oldest first. In a literature survey, you start with the oldest paper and show how literature has evolved. So Dalal is a starting work. After that, Abramsky makes this improvement. Ghislandi makes a further improvement. This is how the literature review should be undertaken. Okay. So after you have made the summary table, then you can start writing the literature survey. Now, you have seen over here that there were 6 or 7 papers. Don't review each paper individually. So that means you don't say that Dalal has done a study in 2011 for India. She has explored the relationship between women's empowerment, so and so. The next study is by Abramsky, 2019, Tanzania. She has looked at this using this. Don't do it like this. You can group all of them together. Like here, I would say what you can do is you can say this entire slide can be summarized in this way. There are 2 methods of measuring empowerment. The first method looks at proxies. Studies have used working status, working facilities, employment status, monthly income, education. Okay. Within brackets, then you state the authors. The second method uses data reduction methods like principal component analysis. People have used studies like Gupta and Yesudian, Srivastav and Kumar have looked at household variables like household autonomy, mobility, attitude towards gender, so and so. Okay. Otherwise, you will not be able to tackle all so many papers. So always you should group them and bring them together. Review doesn't mean you have to summarize each paper individually. I don't know about Upanita who is doing some internship. Her literature review is different. Sometimes we ask people to do a literature survey to just summarize the papers so that we don't need to read the papers. I'm not talking about these literature reviews. I'm talking about a literature review when you're writing a paper. In that case, it's not a proper paper. You're just doing some homework for a different person. Am I right, Upanita? How do you do the literature reviews?
So basically, I have to read certain papers, and then it's like the same way only. I have to do
Summarize
yes, sir.
each paper.
Summarize or not each paper, like whatever you suggested, that way only.
Okay, then you're lucky. But remember that you're given the papers. But when you're doing your work, you have to identify the papers. And here, search engines, keywords, these are very important. Okay.
Okay, sir.
So remember that the first step is keywords. Second step is identify the papers. Third step is prepare a summary table. Fourth, using the summary table, start writing. So the summary table should give you what people call a geography of earlier research studies. You should know the terrain, the landscape. Okay. So if I go to here, if I'm going to North India, I'm going to see Delhi. I'm going to see wonderful Mughal buildings. If I go to South India, I'm going to see the Chola temples. If I'm going to Western India, I'm going to see the rock paintings. Okay, so this is what the summary table or the literature study should give you. It should give you the landscape.
Sir, can one of the things also be like geography itself, that we are looking at South Asia, that we are looking at where like North America, like that?
See, if your research question cannot be North America, that is not a research question. It has to be on a particular aspect of South Asia.
Yes, but like you mentioned proxies and then the other method. In that similar way, can like geographical locations itself be a theme to divide or make a table of like earlier research?
Generally, we don't use geography as a basis for themes. However, in one case, 2 years ago, we did some work. There was a master's project in which people looked at wage gaps between male and female workers. Okay, and there were three findings. One was called a sticky floor. The other was a glass ceiling. Okay, so there were two main findings. So it was found that in Latin America, you had you had both the phenomenon. In developing countries, you had the sticky floor, and in developed countries, you had the glass ceiling. So in this case, you can go for a geographic. If you look at it, it's not really geographic. Africa, well, in one sense, Africa, Asia, you have glass sticky floor. Latin America, you have both the phenomenon, and in Europe and North America, you have glass ceiling. In that case, you can divide it up into a geographical on the basis of geography. But generally, we don't use geography. It will not give you a meaningful category. Like over here, there are two studies, one for India and one for Tanzania. There's no point in distinguishing between these two studies. Okay, because the findings are roughly the same. So have I answered your question?
Yes, sir.
So it's better not to use geography.
Sir, but can there
Better
not
not
be
to
a
use.
sir, but can there not be a variable which is in Tanzania but not in India, but it is also affecting?
No, it's see where a variable as such is not important. Is the finding completely different? That is important. See, you cannot have carbon copies of studies. There will always be small differences between studies. When you're doing a literature survey, you have to focus on the main parts. Okay, like she's using some indicators. Here, Abramsky is looking at different indicators. This is a third group. But all of them are proxies. They are measures of indirect measures of empowerment. If you see that, okay, this is marital age and education, this is a separate proxy, then your literature study is going to swell up, is going to become huge. You will have 40, 50 studies like this. So small differences are not important. It's the main differences that are important. Like here, you're using a particular method. Here, using a different method. That is important. Findings, that is important. Okay, remember that you have to, your literature survey has to be finished in maximum 2 pages, preferably in 1.5 page. So can you review for 12 pages, 12 papers in 1.5 page if you review each paper individually? Is it possible? It's not possible.
No, sir.
So that's why you have to use some categories and summarize using the categories. There will always be small differences. Now, when you are writing, doing the literature survey, you will have to refer to studies. In fact, at the introduction itself, you will have to refer to studies. This is called in-text citation. There are different styles. Choose any one. It doesn't matter. So examples are, according to Brown, you give the year in which the work was published. Recent studies have shown that the chances is even high. There are 2 or 3 studies, 3 studies. So you give the studies. See, it's Smith, comma, year of publication, semicolon. Author, comma, year, semicolon. Okay. There's no and. Now, how do you arrange these authors? Again, there are 2 methods. You can either arrange them by year of publication, or you can arrange them alphabetically. If you arrange them alphabetically, it's easier. Abel, Smith, and Vossy. If you arrange them by year of publication, Smith, 21, there are 2 publications, arrange it alphabetically. Okay. If you're quoting something, pointing out that the arguments help to form his intellectual development, whatever. Sen, comma, you give the year of publication, colon, and then the page from which the quotation comes from. Bracket close. Okay. Remember look at one thing. Does this quotation end with a full stop?
No, sir.
Quotations should not end with a full stop. If they have a quotation end with a full stop, remove it. Okay. Now, how many words? Yes. Bolo.
Sir, for this thing like sen, 2005:45, how we will understand which particular work we are referring to? Like he can have more than one work in 2005.
5.
So,
সেটা আমি আসছি. Right now, the short answer is he can check it up in the references at the end of the paper. So any word that you cite will automatically be given in details in the references. Achha. Now, how many words does this quotation have?
So if it has less than 40, then it can go in the main text. But if it's more than 40, then একটা footnote করে দিতে হবে.
Not footnote. It should be in an indented paragraph. I have it somewhere. Sorry, it should be. I'll come to it later. I'll show you what an indented paragraph is. I don't want to go to Word again. So it should come as if it's more than 40 words, it should be in a separate paragraph. Okay. So suppose this is more than 40 words, it should be like this. Pointing out that something like this. There'll be no bullets, of course. So this will be in 40 words. Okay. And this last thing, all in-text citations should be in references. Now, after you have done the summary of the literature, you should end with a subsection on limitations. And these limitations should identify or lead to your research question. So you should say that, okay, these are the literature survey, these are the works, and they have covered this. And here, you should now be very polite. Don't be very aggressive. That look at the stupid donkeys. They have not looked at what has happened to cancer treatment. No. be very polite that these papers have highlighted very important questions, but even though we know, all of us know that they are donkeys, they have not been able to look at, or the studies, the wonderful studies need to be expanded to cover these areas. These areas are left uncovered. So be very polite. These are wonderful works. They have done a huge service to us, but there are limitations on what people can do. And these are some of the limitations. So you have to say that, okay, these are the limitations. Now, how do you identify these limitations? The best way is when you go to the papers, you will often see in the concluding part, they identify the limitations of their own works and how the work needs to be extended. This should give you an idea of what research question to address. The biggest mistake that we do is we say that there are many studies, but none of them for India. That is why we have to do a study in India. If it hasn't been done for India, chances are it's not important or it's not feasible. Okay, so the research limitation should be used as the foundation for your research question. You should have one research question: how COVID has affected cancer treatment. You can, to address this easily, you can break it up into several sub-questions or sub-issues. Like, for instance, one question can be how COVID has affected detection. Okay. Has affected surgery. What other issues can they be?
So maybe like how COVID has affected chemotherapy and
It
basically
can be
other
what
things
is
related to
how COVID has
treatment.
been. Oh, okay, detection.
How COVID has affected affordability.
I'm just keeping it to 4. Okay. I'm sure that you can think of others. Do you know what is palliative treatment? Palliative treatment is the person is going to die, and so it's the end of life care treatment. Now tell me what is wrong with this with this. These are important.
So it's haphazard.
Exactly. What should be the arrangement?
So first it would be that how COVID has affected detection, then chemotherapy, then surgery, then palliative care.
Actually,
treatment.
surgery comes before. Generally, it comes before chemotherapy.
Okay,
Though we can also have chemo in the start. Okay. In fact, I've left out treatment, general diagnosis, treatment, so on. So we can have stages in between. Anyway, so if you are looking at these 4 sub questions, you can write them down initially in whatever way. After that, arrange them sequentially. There is a sequence. So the sub questions has to be arranged in this way, not haphazardly. Then you're coming to the research question. You're saying that COVID has affected detection. How will you test this? What is the hypothesis that you can have? So this is your research question in a textual form. Now you have to translate it in a form when you can perform the analysis. So you have to reframe the question in such a way that your analysis will tell you whether it is true or wrong. What, in other words, what do you want to look at in order to find out whether this has happened or not?
So whether now patients are saying that they have longer wait lists to get their treatment, or they're saying that they have lessened their hospital visits, by how many months have they like kind of shifted their slots of treatment?
Okay.
Sir,
One is
stage of
waiting
cancer
time.
detection.
Frequency of routine screenings.
Routine screening means that you have already, okay, ठीक है, I will,
Like if the
actually,
gaps are more, it would
okay,
mean
okay,
that this.
yeah, okay. I've just kept 3, okay. We are actually not doing the study. So let's keep it. So now you have some parameters. So if you can look at the waiting time in, let us say, 2018 and 2019, and let us say, suppose you have the data, okay, and 2021. You have the waiting time over here, the waiting time over here. Now it becomes very easy. You can test it out. If the waiting time is the same, it won't be, but suppose it's the same. What is the answer to this?
It is not affected detection.
Hmm?
So then the
Sorry?
first answer will be that it has not affected detection, and then we will have to go ahead and see why it hasn't affected detection.
Yeah.
Like what are the
So you,
possible reasons that it
yeah,
hasn't?
yeah. So that will come in the discussion part. But see, what you have done is you have a research question. This is your main question. You have sub question, and you have the hypothesis, which is the operational part of the question. Right. So once you have this, you can easily go to your method. Now here what we often do is, so each sub question should have a corresponding hypothesis. And now you should use, at this stage, you should use what we call a concept map. Just take hold of a piece of paper and write down. Sorry. I was about to write as cancer affected COVID. Okay, so you have questions. So what was the first question? Detection. Okay. So what was your operational hypothesis? Let us say. See, if you compare these, write down all the hypotheses that you have. Waiting time, stage of cancer treatment, routine, etc. So I'm just going with one branch. Waiting hypothesis, what? Waiting time. So what is the method of testing? Right? So what is the data that you will require?
So it would be quantitative data from hospitals itself, who go for like who have like a database of cancer patients, and then we can ask some like qualitative data from the cancer patients
No,
themselves.
you're
That
just looking at waiting time. What is waiting time?
so the waiting time is basically you schedule an appointment and then you're waiting for that, for a date to go ahead and start your
Okay.
detection or your procedures, tests,
Okay.
etc.
No, can we say in this way that you're calling up the hospital today, which is 10th, and you get an appointment on some other day. So T and T plus I and J, you have got 2 time periods. What is the difference between I and J? After how many days are you getting the appointment? This is the waiting time. Achha. Now, where will you get the data?
So hospitals themselves, and then we can also ask the patients themselves. So two sources so that we can see if both correspond to each other.
Okay. You have raised an important point, which is validation.
Sir, I have a question, sir. Is
Yeah.
only the survey a source of data for this, or do we
No,
have
not
some
necessarily.
secondary source also?
Not necessarily. You can any type of data can do. You can go to the hospital. You can collect what is called. You can use survey data collected by some other person.
Yes, sir.
So I have done a
Secondary.
survey and I put it up on the net. You can download that and use it. You can use census data, data published by different organizations, government or private. CMIE, for instance, does a periodic, every 3 months, they do a survey. NSSO does some surveys. So these are the sources that you can use. But obviously, if you go to the census, they will give us data after every 10 years. And they don't cover cancer. So it has to be an appropriate data. So where do you think that, do you think that anyone collects data on waiting time? Any organization?
We might
No,
have
sir.
to take a questionnaire.
So either you have to go to the hospital and say that, okay, what I want is that today, 10th August, how many people have called up and what is the date on which you have given the appointments? Right? Or what you can do is, what is the other way in which you can get hold of this data?
Sir, making a questionnaire and giving it to the patient so they can fill it out and say what has happened with them.
Forget about the question. I mean, see, what you can do is you can wait in the clinic. When a patient comes, you can say that, okay, today's 10th of August. When did you book the appointment? Right? So either hospital or the patients. So suppose you have sources. This is possible. But suppose you are looking at, let us take Kritika's example, screening. So instead of waiting time, we take screening. So how frequently do people screen? Do you think that this type of data will be, screening data will be easily available?
Sir, no, because different patients are given different
Or even,
frequency
let
to
us say,
do the tests.
or let us say, wait 1 minute, even this data, when do we need this data? For 2021, you can collect this data. But do you have the data for 2019? If you're collecting only from patients, suppose hospital says we won't give it to you, but you can collect it from the patients.
No, sir, not always. Like it's tough to find like all patients and like conduct the survey, etc. So on the, I guess we again resort back to data which is available on the websites in this case.
No, will you get such data on the website?
If there are previous studies conducted, but again there was no COVID in 2019. But
Yeah.
again, if there was some previous study conducted
If there was,
on
otherwise, say if there are no previous studies, then you have to. What you say is you can't use this method. It breaks down, right?
yes, sir.
So that means you have started in this way, but this is not a feasible method. So that means you'll have to change, instead of waiting time, you should use a different method, a different indication of testing. Okay, so once you prepare the COVID, this concept map, it has got two advantages. You have signposted your entire work. Second is there will be some roads which are cul-de-sacs. You know what cul-de-sacs are? Andhi Gali.
Dead end.
It's a road which leads to a dead end. If the hospital refuses to give you the data, you have a dead end over here. But suppose the hospital says, yeah, I will give you the data. Is it a dead end? Now it's very profitable.
No, sir.
Hospital can give you for 2019 also. So then you choose another indication of detection. What were the ones that we had taken? Stage of
So
cancer
stage
detection.
of detection.
Yeah. So again, you can use in this way. So you can have a arrow from here, hypo, stage, what is the method, and so on, what data you require, and so on. Okay. So in this way, you should build up a huge concept map. So what you can do is later on, the answer is yes or no. You can add to it later on. So when you have a yes, what are the reasons? No, what are the reasons? Like this, you can build up this concept map. It is something which can evolve. But when you're starting the work, it's better if you have it. If you at least make a concept map like this, this will help you to plan. Okay, you know which are the dead ends, what you can do. Okay. So you asked that what are the data sources? It can be primary, it can be secondary. Primary data source is what is the data that you have yourself collected. So you have to explain how you have collected it, what is the sampling strategy, when did you collect it, that is the period you went to the clinics and you asked all the patients, or did you ask only the new patients, or every fifth new patient, whatever. It was collected in the months of October to December 21. So you have to give all these details. Whether it was random, non-random sampling, whatever. You can also use secondary data. There's nothing wrong. Data from census and so on. So again, in that case, you should identify the source, the year, how they collected the data, and often they have a lot of variables. So which of the variables you are going to use? Now in this, remember that I told you that this is a section. So the data and methodology section should have two main parts. The first one is data, where you give the details about the data. And you should also give a sample profile. In case of continuous variables like age, years of education, income, give the mean, median, variance, the number of observations in a table. If it is categorical, that is, what is your religion, what is your caste, what is your stream, Education can be also a categorical variable. That is, instead of collecting years of education, you group them primary, illiterate, primary, secondary level, like this. Income can also be categorical. Income is monthly income is from 0 to 10,000, 10,001 to 20,000, like this. In that case, you give the percentage distribution. So you have the structure of the profile. After which you come to the methods. Now the exploratory analysis, you generally have two types of analysis. You have an exploratory analysis using graphs and tables to identify patterns and trend. Now sometimes you can make a table or graph, but if it is very simple, remember space is important. So rather than giving a graph or table, you can simply present it in a text itself. So suppose you want to say that the sample is divided into, you have got a sample of 100 people and 40 of them are male, 60 of them are females. Will you give a table for this?
No, sir.
Table, graph, it looks very visually attractive. It takes a lot of space. So simply write, out of the sample of 100, 40% were males. Generally, we give more complex analysis in tables, graphs, where you have more details. We make the graphs in Excel. When you make them, after making them, we paste them in Word. Now, one thing I'll say, save your Excel file. The main data should be there. The graph in Excel should be there, so that you can go back, revise later on after maybe 3 months, 6 months, and so on. Okay, so just after you've made the table, paste it in Word, don't remove the Excel, save it, keep it with you. You may want to come back and change it. If you're making a report which is going to be purely online, try to use color. Don't use fluorescent colors. Use deep colors, they come out well. But you do use colors. But if you're printing the report, remember you may have to print it. The cost may be yours. So use color sparingly. I'll come to Excel later. Let me come to it straight away. Wait, let me come to the other part, analysis, confirmatory analysis. This is not very important for you. The simple reason is that you do not have the necessary statistical skills to undertake very meaningful and confirmatory analysis. In exploratory, you look at the patterns and trends. In confirmatory, you have a hypothesis, you prove, you examine whether the hypothesis holds or not. Confirmatory analysis can be divided into two parts. Univariate, you simply test whether the mean is positive or not, whether the mean of two groups vary or not, like this. In multivariate, you bring in additional factors. For instance, if you look at the fertility rate across religion, you will find that the fertility rate of Muslims are generally higher. Can we say that Muslims do not believe in family planning, do not believe in birth control? Why? The reason why we cannot say is that Muslims have higher it's not Muslims which is the problem. It is economic status. Most Muslims belong to the upward, and we find that it is poverty which leads to high fertility rates. Okay, so if we just compare the mean number of children of Muslims and non-Muslims, it will not give you the correct result. The univariate result will not be correct. You have to introduce control variables, and instead of doing a mean test, you have to run a regression model. Okay. So this is multivariate analysis. Instead of looking at the mean or median, whatever, for one variable across two groups, we bring in a large number of variables into the analysis. Yeah. Was someone trying to make a point?
I'm interrupting you. Actually they may find it very difficult. Actually,
Yeah.
in the course we have put the things in such a way so that step by step, as you move from one semester to another semester, you learn all these things. So ultimately, at the end of the day, at the end of fifth semester, you learn all these things, and when you will be in the sixth semester, you will have total grip over all this univariate analysis, multivariate analysis, distinction between exploratory, confirmatory. You will get all these things. In this next semester, you have all statistical tools where you will
They'll be
learn
doing this part, right?
univariate part.
Now, univariate, is it in the third sem?
Yes.
Okay, so they'll be doing this and this.
Yeah. Yeah. And in
Multivariate
fourth
from the
semester,
fifth.
they will have, fourth semester, they will have the regression analysis, the basics of econometrics they will
Yeah.
have. And if somebody takes options, later they will learn more. So this is the plan. Okay, so you will learn all these things. Don't be confused, So at this moment, you don't know.
Yeah. So ideally, if you knew everything, your analysis should start with exploratory, come to confirmatory. In confirmatory, do the univariate test first, followed by multivariate. The problem is that you will not be able to do, given your level, you will not be able to do, at your level, confirmatory analysis is not possible. But don't worry, you can do very good exploratory analysis, very meaningful analysis, fascinating analysis using exploratory tools.
Zaki,
Very good.
just a reminder, So it's
Time.
11:37. Okay. So
Hmm?
11:37.
হ্যাঁ করে নিচ্ছি আমি, হ্যাঁ একটু স্পিড আপ করছি।
স্পিড আপ করো বা ব্রেক করলে অন্য দিন
না ঠিক আছে করে নি। So this is one of the earliest graphs in 1669, the survival rate drawn from, this was during the plague period. Okay. So this is Napoleon's, I'll show you one fascinating example of exploratory analysis. This is based on Charles Minard's map of Napoleon's Russian campaign in 1812. You know that Napoleon had attacked Russia, and his plan was to start off with a huge army, reach Moscow, and take shelter in Moscow for the winter. And after winter, he would continue the march and conquer Russia. So the width of this measures the army that he has. And you can see it's going down. The reason is that he's keeping stocks of people. He's telling them, he's keeping men over here. So the number is going down. He started off with 4,22,000. It is 1,75,000 here, 1,45,000. When he reaches Moscow, it is 1 lakh. And do you know what happened when he reached Moscow?
No, sir.
Moscow was in flames. The Russian people allowed Napoleon to enter Moscow without challenging them. And when he took shelter in Moscow for the winter, they set Moscow on fire. Remember, it was wooden buildings. So what happens when a fire breaks out? What will you do? Remember, it's not the modern times. When you have fire engines coming, you have the cylinders. So you take buckets and you take out water from the wells, right? And what the Muscovite people had done was, they had cut the ropes to all the wells and destroyed all the buckets also. So there was no way in which Moscow could be the fires in Moscow could be put down. So that means when winter, in the middle of winter, Napoleon started with 1 lakh people and he had to retreat. And over here you can see Napoleon has started the march, retreat, the temperature is 0. You can see the different places, how his numbers are falling and how the temperature itself is falling. And how this is reducing his grand army. 1,96,000, 87,000. And now, what is the number? He started off with 4,22,000. And what is the number now? And the temperature is -30. It's only 10,000. His army was in shambles, and you know after that. Wellington, Blucher, Leipzig, and Waterloo. So you can see that this is an exploratory analysis, nothing statistical. But this entire map gives you, summarizes the events of 6 months, the destruction of one of the greatest empires that the world has ever seen. You can write books on this, but he has just drawn one map in which he summarized everything. You won't be able to, you don't have the skill. I don't have the skill for this. But another example. This is a paper by A City is Not a Tree by one of the greatest architects, Christopher Alexander. So he was in cities, the concept was zoning, that every people are of different types, different preferences. So each people should live in a different locality and not interact with one another. So you should have independent branches. And Alexander criticized this. So you have maps. These are, see, this is the city is a tree. And this is what he envisaged, where you have overlapping people. You have greater mingling, more inclusive city. Look at this, and this is the resulting branches. So, very simple diagrams, exploratory analysis can give you very meaningful results, very deep results. You can use, look at this graph. This is something that you can do. See, the red line is we are looking at institutional delivery. This red line is the sustainable development goal. You have to bring institutional delivery to this level. Look at in 92, India and Bihar. We were studying Bihar. India is very poor, Bihar is even worse. They are rising. In 2005, there was the National Rural Health Mission. So I've indicated this by this arrow. See, the gap has, look at this gap has widened. And look at the gap over here, 10 years after the NRHM, post-NRHM. Like, we have not only approached SDG, Bihar is still lagging behind, but the gap has gone down. So again, this figure, this graph, if you can make it meaningfully, it really is worth 1,000 words. On the other hand, look at this graph. We are measuring divorce and separation across age groups. We are getting a trend, okay. But look at this. The important thing, look at the length of divorce, not high. What we have is separation. Separation is more common than divorce. That is coming out in this picture. So which graph to select, that is also skill. Just because it is not a hi-fi econometric analysis, don't think that it is something to sneeze at. It's very difficult. Proper exploratory analysis is very difficult. If you can do it meaningfully, you can get a lot. Look at this table. What does this table tell you? Yeah.
So for these kind of data, like how do we collect these kind of data? Like, is it only like on the basis of survey?
What data?
about the percentage of the divorced and the
Oh,
percentage of
this is
separation.
Ankita there?
Yes, sir.
Ankit, yeah,
Yes.
answer this question.
So we can collect these data. The data is available online. So you can go on the NFHS website. They have data.
NFHS, where did you collect this from?
From the census data 2011, 1991, 2001. So these data are available over there.
So it depends. Your problem, you may not know which data where the data is. So you have to ask around. There will be people who will help you. Again, look at this. This looks at dissolution plus separation. What does this table tell you? But look at this. You see very clearly that separation rates are lower in the so-called cow belt. It's much higher in the southern part of India. Jammu Kashmir is an aberration. The data is not very perfect over here. You can draw a line like this. See, this is the cow belt and the remaining part. So the table doesn't reveal this analysis. So again, this is a simple picture can do a lot of work for you. Now, when you're doing the table or figure, you should always put the source below, like this. If you want to explain what is fiscal deficit, revenue deficit, put notes below this. Similarly, for graphs, put the figure below this. Okay. Label the axis. Even if you don't keep this axis, label this. Label the y-axis, label x-axis, and this legend should be at the bottom. That will save space. Always refer to tables and graph in the text. The analysis of divorce rates, bracket table 1 reveals. Never the graph below. Why? Because you may have to change the position of the graph. But if you just say table 1, it's always going to remain table 1. But depending on how your writing goes, it may be below the paragraph, above the paragraph. Number them sequentially, like figure 1 : caption. Or table 2 below caption. Look at this table and compare between this table. Which table looks nicer? And why?
So the right hand side one, because like in the left one, the borders are cluttering the entire visual of it.
Too many grids. So then
Yes.
just 3 will do fine. What other problems are there?
So the alignment
So
is
the
not
text
alignment.
is not aligned.
Alignment. Next is look at this. Sorry. Look at this part. These 4 figures.
So the
Yes,
last
sir, same
zero was
here.
wrong.
Too large.
Then look at the heading, particularly over here.
So the heading is like the words
It
are
is.
So
being
it's
cut.
not arranged properly. The words are not arranged properly.
See here, it's a very simple table. You have it in bold. Everything is arranged systematically. Centrally aligned, 2 digits. Okay, so this is the mistake. You paste the data, but you don't arrange it. You think that, okay, this is a table, that is all. Finish. Achha. So once you have done your exploratory analysis, then you come to the discussion part. Discuss the findings in detail. So initially you just say that, okay, this is the table. Don't analyze all the parts. Give the main parts. Like 46 has got the highest closeness score. The lowest is whatever, 39 is this one, 39 of this. Just give one or two important facts which are going to be important for your results. In discussion, you go back to your findings and then discuss the reasons for your results. Why is this? Is it what you expected? Is it what you didn't expect? Is it unexpected? If so, why? Does it match earlier studies? Why doesn't it match earlier studies? Okay. So in findings, you just state, give right to 3 lines about the table. Here, you contextualize your findings. Now you say, when you're coming to your conclusion, you say that this study looks at the impact of cancer treatment under COVID. We had looked at waiting time, stage of treatment, so and so, so and so. And we find that in each case, the result shows this. Okay. So the first 2 points should be done very briefly. Then come to your policy implications. What happens is, when you write policy implications, you write whatever you know. Cancer requires this, cancer requires more funds. But has your study looked at funds? If it hasn't, don't bring it into the analysis. So your policy implications should be related to your results. So you have discussed something. You have a long waiting time. So your policy implication should be with reference to waiting time. How to reduce waiting time. Your policy implication should be stage of treatment, if possible. I don't think that there's any relevant policy implication, but or maybe you can increase awareness. Then give your limitations. Be honest. Okay, this is the study. I would have liked to do this, but I'm sorry, but this data is simply not available. So I had to do this instead. So give it. 2019, I can't go back in time and collect the data. So I have asked the people, what was your waiting time? I've relied on memory. So if the memory is wrong, my results are also wrong. But I can't. Can you go back in 2019? At this point, you can't. And then you say that, okay, this is the work that I've done, but if I had more time, if I had more data, my analysis has thrown up some additional questions, which I would have liked to do, but it would have led to a huge paper. So just state some of the extensions and finish off. Now coming to the references, as I've said, that references are a bit difficult to make. Luckily, we have freeware called Mendeley and Zotero. If you can use them, it's fine. I have a YouTube video on how to use Mendeley. You can check it up in the Prezi website, the one that you use. So Mendeley would take an additional hour. This I've already covered. So I'm not. This also I've covered. Yeah, this is quotation. So this is a short quotation in the text, but this is a long quotation. So next paragraph and indented. Okay. And remember, there's no quotation over here. The quotation comes over here. Sorry, the punctuation mark comes over here. Okay. Now, one important distinction, reference bibliography. Reference is the list of material which you have referred to in the text. Bibliography is the list of material that you have consulted. You may have cited them, you may not have cited them. We don't use bibliography. We use references. Okay. Bibliography are used in very special cases. Those cases will never apply to you. Appendix, as I've said, supplementary tables and graphs. Additional tables. Before doing starting your work, make a concept table. I'm winding down, just give me 2-3 minutes more. Make an outline of when you're writing a section, make an outline. a bulleted outline of what you'll write. Go through it. You will see that your initial draft is not very appropriate. You'll find some difficulties once you go through it. Rearrange it. Once you have a draft, then just go through it in the mind how you'll write it and then start writing. I'm currently doing some work on adolescent cancer. One of my PhD students are writing it. And the way that she's writing it, she's first dealing with treatment of cancer patients. Then she's moving on to the death of cancer patients. Then she's coming to diagnosis. As you can see, this theme is haphazard. So once you write down, you'll realize that, okay, I have these many themes and they should be arranged in this way. When you write simply, short sentences. Do not use complex terms. Don't try to build up a great work. When a person reads it, he should feel that the work can be done very easily. You have not done any work at all. Only the discerning reader should know the effort that you have put into it. Two references. Have you read Sheridan's School for Scandal? No, I don't think so. There's a character over there, Mrs. Malaprop. She loved to use complex terms. Unfortunately, the terms were out of place. She did not know the meaning of the terms, and this has given rise to a new word in literature, malapropism, from her name. Malapropism means you are using complex terms wrongly. Try to avoid this. Another thing, Cardinal Richelieu, if you have read Three Musketeers, he's the chief villain, but a real person, a great statesman. He wrote an 18-page letter once. In the last line he wrote, I'm writing to you in a hurry. Next time I'll take more time and I'll send you a shorter letter. Writing a huge piece is not difficult. Writing concisely is more difficult. This is what you aim at. Grammatical, two important mistakes. The prepositions are dropped by us. Avoid extremely critical, deeply tragic. Tragic is tragic. What is lightly tragic? What is lightly critical? So it should be just critical, just tragic. After finishing the draft, read it once. Not immediately, wait for 3-4 days, read it again. You'll be shocked at what you have written. You'll have to rewrite it again, do it again. So at least 3 revisions. And then put a final check.
Paper and the method or the hypothesis that we use, sir, we need to maintain the set par, means the conditions need to be the same. Sir,
What
if we are
conditions?
measuring the data in 2019 and 2021, sir, so no way the means rate of detection remains the same. Means lifestyle changes, sir. A lot of other parameters are also at work, sir, but we have not made any room for there, even in exploratory analysis.
See, in exploratory, we don't, as I've said, exploratory is not so much technical or rigorous. So there will be a lot of gaps in exploratory. You just want to find out patterns. It will not help you to confirm your hypothesis. When you come to confirm your hypothesis, you have to see whether the time change is important. In what way is the, in these 2 years, is the lifestyle change so important that it can lead to a change in detection? I mean, for instance, if you're talking about, let us say, diabetes.
Skin cancer means earlier people were outdoors, now they're indoors.
I would say skin cancer. Yeah, if it has. In case of diabetes, for instance, people are now more sedentary. So that means it's going to go up. But see, what we want to do is find out the effect of COVID on diabetes. COVID as such will not affect diabetes. It's the pathway. So what is the pathway? COVID leads to, this is where your concept map comes into, can be used. COVID leads to sedentary lifestyles, which leads to high diabetes. Okay. So that is okay. In that case, you're saying that it is because of lifestyle change that you're getting high rates of detection.
Yes, sir.
Sir, how do we get data for unorganized sector or for people who are living below a certain?
If you're talking about COVID,
whose data not always.
see, there is data. CMIE publishes, as I've told you, 3 months data, but it's very costly. We have tried to get hold of the data, but our department, didn't have the funds.
Sir,
It's a paid website. It's paid.
CMI
Every round is about, I think, 1 lakh something.
Yes.
So if you have contacts in IIM or ISI, they might help you. But otherwise, you won't be able to buy it. NSSO data, for instance, I have till 19, but not 19, till I think 2018. I have all the NSS rounds data. Census data is available on the online. So depending on your research problem, you have to see whether the data is available. If it's not, you always have primary survey to do. But that itself is costly, remember.
At this stage, it will be difficult for them to, both accessing and understanding the huge
Unit level data. CMI data is difficult for you.
Yeah.
Because you'll need, see, CMI data, it will not give you a table. You will have to download the data, format it. It's difficult even for a PhD student. And then you'll have to use a soft.
Yeah, better if they go for RBI. If somebody is interested about some macro related issues and India, in that case, RBI data will be easier for them to understand.
No, but I think they wanted to look at how COVID affects the unorganized sector, right?
Oh yeah, Anandarupa mentioned that.
Yes, yes.
Shekhane, in that case, if you can get hold of the Azim Premji data, for instance, where
So
they
what
have
is
data
the data you
unorganized.
have on the net, freely downloadable, freely available. You have to prepare your theme based on those database at this moment.
আর দেখো একটা জিনিস খেয়াল রাখো তোমরা যে লেভেলে স্টাডি করছো I have given you the template for a good, high quality research. In your case, as I've told you, confirmatory analysis is not possible. We say that a primary survey should have at least more than 1,000 data points. In your case, even 30-40 will do. So you can also do some primary survey, but it's risky.
So
Remember that.
At this moment, they will write articles. So they will start with those kind of things, not proper paper. However, I hope they got some flavor how to proceed.
Once you prepare a concept map, you'll see what is feasible or not. So just don't think of a theme, of an idea. Just go through, work out everything.
Yeah.
See whether it is feasible or not.
Okay. So take 5 to 7 days, and by 5 to 7 days, each of the group try to develop some theme on the basis of today's idea. So database you need, what kind of hypothesis you may frame, what you are liking to write. So take 7 days and discuss all the things with your team members and come with your topic. So we will send you